After a rocky start to the 2026 regulations, Red Bull looked like they're starting to figure some things out. So I figured what better time to talk about Red Bull than Red Bull Ring weekend in Austria. And to help me do that is Ryan, the Breadman Fruick, joining me to discuss this Red Bull resurgence. And honestly, what are your thoughts on Red Bull so far this season, Ryan?
Well, I mean, my initial thoughts were, wow, they got cooked. They got overcooked. They were baked. And now they're punching their way back up. They adopted the Macarena wing. They're changing the car. They somehow, we've talked about it several times, have the best in class quote unquote engine. They don't get any delicious Arduo time. They unfortunately have to live with their whatever. I forgot. I had the horsepower numbers. I've lost them. And Max is seemingly not giving up. He looked a little dejected, I would say, round 1 and 2, and now he's fighting. He's willing to spin his car through Miami and then fight through the entire grid to show up like P5 or whatever he ended up getting. So they're still there. They're kind of leading the midfield in my mind, even though they should be more punching with Ferrari.
It's really weird to say that they're this midfield team because there's very much so a top 4 right now. I mean, it's easy to forget, though, that like in the opening round that Isack Hadjar technically out-qualified Max in his debut with Red Bull. Max had that redonkulous send into the wall in Australia. Get a little nice view of it here. The car completely shuts down. You can see it on the steering wheel there. And this was, no pun intended, a rocky start for Red Bull this season. And it was a trend that kind of stuck around with them for a bit, right? China was another one of those forgettable weekends for Red Bull. Max suffered a lap 45 DNF. Hadjar had a salvageable P8. In Australia, Max, though, carved his way up, right? You mentioned that even in Miami. Max was able to carve his way up in like P5, P6. He ended up passing Lando Norris in Australia. So we knew that there was something kind of working for Red Bull. Japan saw them finish P8, P12. That was rough. But like the first sign you mentioned of them being kind of good this year, Miami. Verstappen fighting for a podium place, a P2 in qualifying, was still able to finish P5 on the feature race. Hadjar clipped that barrier and, through that chicane section. But, there was some positives to take away from that weekend. And it's easy to look at the turmoil as what I thought was going to be a predictably rough season for Red Bull in 2026 is coming true. But they had a ton of changes in leadership. They've had a ton of changes in the engineering side of things. They've had a ton of changes administratively up and down. But they walked into this 2026 season as a first-time power unit manufacturer too, and they spent a ton of resources last year on the title push. There was every reason to believe that Red Bull were going to legit be a legit midfield contender instead of just rounding out the bottom of the top 4. And I think it's safe to say after the first few rounds, Red Bull were kind of in the depths of hell, though, right? Yeah. But, now they're back in the thick of it.
Yeah, I didn't want to take over there, but I do also want to point out they are still just barely cresting their feeder team. We've talked about it before, but the people behind them are V-carbs. So Red Bull, for all of their slow found success, I do have to temper it with they are still 4th pretty predominantly, and it's not like McLaren didn't also face an entire write-off weekend, and they've had some of these moments. So there is a part of me that's the Red Bull's quick. It seems to be the pendulum is swinging back towards Max as it gets quicker. He's really competitive in quali too, which I think is the huge thing for the Red Bull. And if it's anything like old Red Bull design philosophy, not that it necessarily will be, if he can ever get out into clean air, it might be a monster. If he could get ahead and alone, it might be an indomitable car. We just haven't seen it because unfortunately, the few times he's been competing up at the front, he's either spun or he just pulled off in Monaco. So there is always that sort of thought in my head of if he can put it on pole or next to Kimi and get that jump and get out ahead, maybe then Red Bull can sort of control the pace. We know they have one of the best strategists in the world with Hannah. We know that their whole strategy department is akin to Mercedes. They don't really put a foot wrong, whereas other teams, McLaren, Ferrari, love to shoot themselves in the foot. So I think when it comes to that, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, Max is constantly threatening them to quit. So the whole team has this desire to deliver, it feels because their golden boy is I'm gonna walk out if we don't start putting wins on the board. But they are only doing as good as VCarb as far as stat. Like they're right there with VCarb and Alpine.
I mean, they did start off this season in the depths of hell. I feel like they have made general progress, but it's really easy to like forget that they've had, I think, like 4 or 5 DNFs during feature races. I think that does kind of fall back into the look. There was so much change and there was so much turnover, especially starting with like the Adrian Newey, domino, right? That all led to eventually Christian Horner being kicked out of things. But I feel like Lauren Mekies is kind of pulling things in the right direction. Like I mentioned a bit ago, like Miami's upgrade seems to be this turning point for them. Max with that P2, finishing the top 5. Canada saw Red Bull immediately pay off their development, though. And I think this is where, like, the Miami moving forward, we can talk about Monaco in a second, but, like, they have made, like, legit progress, even though they did start off really, really rough. Because immediately, Red Bull paid off with their first podium of the season. Even with the George Russell DNF and some McLaren bot strategy, they, like you talked about, took advantage of other people's misfortunes and were right in the correct position where they needed to be, right? Part of this sport is honestly just being in the right place at the right time. There have been plenty of race winners who have just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Red Bull, in this particular instance, happened to be in the right place at the right time when George Russell DNF'd, and McLaren decided to put both the damn cars on intermediates when it was the strategy decision. But Monaco saw some more of those gremlins, Max Verstappen with that DNF, but Hadjar finished P4, right? I mean, he got to spray the champagne, and then Pierre Gasly's penalty was overturned, but Hadjar, is looking pretty good as well. Considering where Red Bull started, though, they're back in the right direction, I feel like is my sentiment. Is it safe to say that Red Bull are making real progress?
I think they are. I think that unfortunately for them, this Ardua thing's going to come through. I'm curious, not to talk about other teams too much, but it does look like upcoming, it looks like Ferrari's going to have, they already have their development, which is offering like 7 brake horsepower or whatever. And there's the new fuel and all this conversation going around. So I am curious if Red Bull is unfortunately going to fall to this system that allows other teams to close the one big advantage they might have really had that we never really got to even see highlighted yet, which is why I'm genuinely, I kind of want a race to happen where Max gets to get out ahead, because I'm curious to see like how the horse runs when it's out in front, because we saw for years they love to make a car where he would shove you off the track to get clean air, because when that car got clean air, it was gone. It was like it turned into a super rocket ship, but it has a lot of problems when it's fighting behind cars, which I think they've sort of suffered through a lot more this season than they would have liked to. But it still looks rapid on Saturday, which is typically where my head, if you're fast on Saturday, you can probably be fast on Sunday. You just need everything to go well. And
their qualifying pace has been super promising. I mean, Hadjar has been doing a damn good job, by the way. I did the average of his qualifying compared to Max. He's less than 2/10 away from Verstappen this year on qualifying Saturdays. And he even beat him in Japan, by the way, like pretty sizably. So like on a legit merit qualifying, Hadjar's been doing a pretty good job. It seems like they have what is kind of a good floor, at least in terms of like some of the top teams. There was a lot of talk about their chassis being fundamentally just like broken in a sense as the season started, but it looks like they've at least built a platform that they can develop around, and it looks like they are finding time. But there's something about the battery that seems to keep catching them out, because they've got the strongest engine. We talked about that a few times in this video, and you mentioned it too, how it looks like that might be the one factor that really keeps them far away, because the ICE by the FIA and the Formula One's testing measures or whatever seems to be, the class of the field enough so that Mercedes are going to get a benefit from it too, by the way.
Yep.
We all thought that was going to be kind of like with the Honda partner, not the Honda partnership, the Ford partnership was going to be, this is going to be a pretty rough year to be Red Bull, but they've at least got a couple of things figured out. They have a strategy. They have at least some level of organization, but I'm just curious going into this specific weekend, what is their biggest advantage in your eyes besides just the engine?
I think, there's a lot, I think, going into this that a lot of people aren't talking about. One, Red Bull historically loves to build their cars seemingly Spielberg first. We've talked about this with other teams, sort of like alone. Like, do they design this car around winning here and then build it out for the rest of the season? Like, does Ferrari start at Monza and then work everywhere else out, even though they can't seem to win at Monza? But Red Bull has the largest turbo of like the leading teams. I think one other team who I can't think, maybe like Cadillac has a similarly sized turbo, but they have the largest turbo. And Spielberg is up in the mountains, thin air, bigger turbo, easier to spool up. You're gonna have a Ferrari with a teeny little turbo that's gonna be like coughing and wheezing next to you as it desperately tries to suck in lungs of air, hits high RPMs. The Merc's still probably going to be rapid. I'm not going to lie. It seems like the perfect car, but I think it is going to bring the Red Bull closer. Plus, on top of that, we're looking at, if I read correctly, like one of the hotter days as far as track temps goes.
Yeah,
which might be
88 degrees American temperature,
yeah,
31 degrees European. So it's gonna be super toasty.
Merc does not like hot weather. They never have for some reason. We just saw Kimi Antonelli blow up in like a warm race, so maybe that'll be the great, that'll pull Merc closer to him. The little turbo will pull Ferrari closer to him, and then the Red Bull will just have the coalescence of these two things that allows them to slip on by, at least in quali. And if they get by in quali, then all of a sudden you're gone in the race and you're running out ahead, and Max gets his win and he stops threatening to go play iRacing all the time. He stays with the team and everything turns around. That's in my mind, that's the dream. Plus they have the giant Macarena wing, which I think is probably going to help them to displace even more thin air. It's going to help them down like the 3 straights that matter in Austria.
And like they have definitely started to figure this car out, right? I mean, they started the season like 8/10 off of the Mercedes in Australia. They brought that thing down to less than a 10th in Monaco. Now, look, I understand it's Monaco, but like they are within striking distance. I think a big part of why they're within that striking distance is admittedly the drivers, right? I mean, we talked a little bit about Hadjar being impressive. I think the Max Verstappen factor certainly makes up for a little bit of those gremlins that they might be finding in the car. His ability to kind of extract that 110%, even through those DNFs. He's still P7, like it's a respectable for considering like the issues they've had this year. Even when he's not GT racing, he can still fly around an F1 track and do things. But I think as the regulations move back towards the ICE, back towards that distinct advantage that the FIA seem to believe that Red Bull have, I think that things are going to start to move in Red Bull's direction. I think it's going to start moving further back into the, oh shit, like they're kind of a problem again. Because the only thing that looks like it's really hitting Red Bull hard is just reliability. We've talked a lot about Mercedes reliability. That's been the big headline, of course, because it's the top of the championship. But I think about how many points that Red Bull have probably left on the table just due to reliability issues with these engines. And heading into Austria, this is their home turf. I feel like this is a perfect weekend for them to just ball out. They're bringing also a huge upgrade package this weekend. This some pictures posted on Reddit here. They completely changed the side pods going into this weekend. Aerodynamically, things are going to look and operate a little bit differently. And this floor edge was also given a lot of shine and a lot of highlight as well. But they've also done a little bit of like work on that tailpipe extension and even those little like side floor inlet in wash things. Red Bull are doing all of the right things, at least in my opinion, when it comes to development. You can't help the amount of turnover that they've had, but you can at least have the best driver on the grid. And they've done a ton of work. They made a lot of progress when it comes to development. I feel like this total package for them is going to very much so separate them from the midfield. I don't feel like it's right to say that they're fighting necessarily with the Alpines. They're just kind of stuck in this middle ground limbo of, you guys are pretty good. You're not bad. You're pretty good on Saturdays. I mean, I don't know, your impressions on that.
I learned my lesson last year. You can't ever count Max Verstappen out. So I think there is a world where these improvements, and just from those pictures you've shown alone, it looks like they're serrating the edge of the car. So I feel like he's going to start slitting tires and running up as fast as he can, because that's the Max.
He's going to kill Lando again.
He's going to kill any car he has to get out in clean air. That's, he's going to be like tire to tire at the apex and he's gonna be like, it's fine. They got the check over at the FIA. Red Bull's clear and they're going to go up ahead. But Yeah, I don't think they're actually fighting with the Alpine, but like if you were someone who'd never seen F1 and you just looked at the stats, you wouldn't look at Red Bull, shockingly enough, as like one of the top teams. You'd be like, oh, these are the midfield guys. You've Red Bull 2, and Alpine. Like, you'd be like, wow, it's really crazy that they've ended up here. And like the top 3 are somehow, running away from them despite all of them having their own various explosions throughout the season. I mean, Chuck's buried a Ferrari into the wall twice now, and still they're way out ahead in the constructors. So I think if Red Bull is hoping that like consistency is gonna get them back into the fight, it might not do it, because like clearly that's keeping them in fourth. They're gonna need, like you said, upgrades, speed, Saturdays that turn into like incredible Sundays, not just They're still decent Sundays. Everything we mentioned here is like really decent, but not for the team that won like 23 races in 1 year. That's always like kind of where it comes to me, is like, these are wonderful results for like the Ford power unit, which it's its first year, but these are horrible results for Red Bull, who's supposed to be like the Titan killer fighting Mercedes up at the front. The fact that Ferrari's ahead of you at any point, if I'm a Red Bull like worker, I'm like, well, we've clearly made a mistake. Ferrari should never be ahead of us. They should always be third. That's where they belong. Ferrari goes third or fourth. They don't go second. We need to make the car faster.
They're just in this like weird middle ground place, is what it seems like. Because like on one side, like there's a lot to be like excited about if you're a Red Bull fan, considering the amount of things that have changed and the amount of turnover that they've seen. But like, you're just in the middle of this weird, like this middle period of, you got some things to be excited about. You got a lot of things to figure out. And I wish that there was maybe a little bit more promise for them, maybe walking into Austria. Like I really wanted to walk into this video and be like, man, like these guys are going to be back in the fight. They're going to be like hunting down McLaren by at least the end of 2026. They've just got a lot to work on. Yeah. I feel like is the motto for Red Bull this year. We're okay. We're not as bad as we thought we were going to be, or we could have been. We have some things to be excited about, but we got a lot to work on. I feel like that might be the fair sentiment for them this season.
I think Austria is going to be, we've talked so much about like defining moments. I think it will mean a lot because like it's your home turf. I don't even think we're being hyperbolic to be like, I think they've probably put a lot of design philosophy and preparation into having a good race here. So I think it's sort of like Puxatani Phil or whatever. They come out and see a win, like winter's over for Red Bull, maybe they'll start being more competitive. They come out and see 2 cars like DNF or something horrific. I think this could be like a huge backslide for Red Bull. Not to catastrophize, but it is sort of this like, I think Austria is going to be like this huge moment. They're coming in with upgrades. They're coming in with a car that hopefully, given how the weekend's already looking, should be at least in the conversation for showing up to the front. And they're showing up with Max Verstappen. And like you said earlier, Isack Hadjar is no slouch. He's not like the Valtteri Bottas to Sergio Perez. He's not 0.6 off every qualifying. He's like right behind Max, which we rarely see in a Red Bull driver. So
he is markedly better than Lawson and Tsunoda were and the end of Checo Perez at Red Bull. Like this kid has real promise. It's not like there's you can fall back on like the drivers being bad. Like no. Like this is a platform that just needs to be fixed. And they're Red Bull.
They've won entire constructors championships on years with like much worse second drivers. So it's interesting to me that the year that they have probably one of the fullest driver pairings they've ever had, they're in fourth. And you're like, the 1 year we should have been like consistently getting like 2s and 3s, 3s and 4s at least. We're getting, not enough points to even be in like P2. I think that's interesting. I'm hoping Austria, they turn it around because like Max, for all of my problems with him, he makes every race interesting. Because like if he makes a mistake, he's going to make it everyone else's mistake. If someone makes a mistake against him, he's going to make it everyone else's problem. And he's going to full send it. So he's fun to watch. And he's got to be terrifying for Mercedes. I have to imagine for Mercedes, they're less afraid of Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari every day than they are like a Max in P2. I have to assume every quali Toto's sitting there like, please let Lewis get P2, because like when he sees Max, he's like, Max will kill my child. Max will run into the side of 12 and kill. Lewis will probably race you really lovingly and then hug your child after the race. Max will throw him into the dirt and then drive away because that's kind of Max's race style. And it's like, I think I want them to show back up because I think they'll make it really interesting. Even if they're just fighting with McLaren for P3, I think At least give Oscar something to do. He's so bored. He's on his phone half the race. He's playing Clash of Clans. we need anything, you know?
Yeah, I feel like the story for Red Bull the rest of this season is going to be like how much good progress can they make, and I feel like this weekend in Silverstone specifically, considering these are their two big like stomping grounds in a way, are going to be, I wouldn't say like complete like signals for the entire season, but they're definitely the ones that I feel like Red Bull have the most pressure on. But I want to hear from the TLPs. How do you feel about Red Bull so far this season? I feel like between the two of us, it's like a mixed at best as we walk into round 8. But do we think that they could probably make some ground up? Do you think that Max and Isack are a terrific pairing? We want to hear from the TLPs. Let us know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe to support the channel. Be sure to check out more of the content. We're chasing 1,000 subscribers, so make sure to subscribe. And we're also going to be live reacting to the Austrian Grand Prix this coming Sunday. So join us for that. Until next time, that is Ryan Fruick. I am Tristan Ryan. Goodness, I'm Tristan Ryans. Be safe, be well. Let's go racing.